Nutrition to Me with our host, Springer. Kelly, how are you? And this is going to be a great guest because I really think his story is amazing and how he's helping people is amazing. And that's where Kelly's Choice and Kelly Springer are looking to transform people's lives in so many ways through your company.
I love this. So I'm really excited for this guest. We are bringing in today David Chametzky, a compassionate voice known for uplifting hearts and minds with his signature, and I love this, New York warmth. As a New Yorker, thank you. As a transformational mentor and speaker, David expertly guides leaders, authors, and podcasters to authentically express their stories and amplify their voices. So whether you are crafting an impactful signature speech, creating books, or launching podcasts, David helps individuals step confidently into their power, rising above challenges to soar higher than ever before. This is exactly what we're trying to do right now. Our last podcast was about this. I think this is a perfect moment, David, and I welcome you to our show because I'm ready to start doing keynote speeches. So this is literally
There you go.
perfect moment in time. And I think that we do need some power. We need some confidence to be able to get up there and share our story. So welcome to the show. Thank you, Neil, for putting this together. And David, tell me a little bit about yourself.
First thing I'll do is I'll let you, off camera, we'll talk about you coming downstate to Westchester. We have this great speaking location called the White Room that I'm now managing. And life is a wild trip. And as the Grateful Dead said, it's a long winding road is actually Paul McCartney. And yeah, it really is. I just finished a 30-year career in corporate America in legal as a paralegal and manager of intellectual property. And then I got this opportunity with one of my best friends to help manage his company. And through that experience, that's where the White Room comes in. And while I was in corporate America, for the past 10 years, I've been coaching people on stress reduction, how to get better. I've done a TEDx talk. So that's why I now coach speakers and craft their messages. And we write books. That's why my background is books. I have 4 published books plus a comic book. Not everybody has a comic book. It's a great way to not only highlight yourself, but it's also a great way to then take your message to a different level. People might not read books. While authors are always going to be needed, and there will be people, more and more of the society is looking for comic books. Give me 10, 15 minutes. Give me a picture, color, movie. Those things are hitting it, and I've worked really successfully with clients and people who want to have a party and they have the means to give gifts. What a unique way. Not everybody can craft be their own superhero, but we are as we become that mind, body, soul connection.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. And I can't wait to come meet with you. I think definitely onto something there with the comic books because we're even getting into school nutrition, doing a lot more on that side. And just last night, we were talking about how do you reach children? How do you reach adults? How do you reach them? And it's got to be fun. It's
Yeah,
got to be fun.
exactly. That's why a lot of the things I do, and I try to come out with a fun way of teaching you. It's like our parents might be, we're going to hide the peas and carrots in the mashed potatoes, and you got to dig it out, and then you still got the kids to eat the vegetables. Same thing, when you read my comic book, you'd see the fact that obviously there's a storyline in it. You could read it just as a storyline, but there's a lot of great ways to have hidden messages or at least showcase yourself. Like eating healthy is the greatest thing. You find the sweet vegetables. I was just talking last night. I love carrots. You can give me carrots all day long, and that's one of the vegetables that I used to always. Now I've become a little bit better about what vegetables I eat, so I don't only eat carrots, but it's still my favorite. It's sweet, so it doesn't have the different flavors, and it has a lot of textures. So that's one of the things when I work with people. I had worked with a specialist when we were talking about vegetables, and they go, that's one of the best vegetables, not only health wise, but it's because it's textural. Most people will like that.
I think it's really interesting. And I think this mental health space is an interesting one as well, where, as we probably know, May was National Mental Health Awareness Month. And for the first time ever, we were booked almost every single day doing a talk for a big organization. We were all over, webinar, in person. And it was amazing to be able to educate on the connection between nutrition and mental health and how directly correlated the two are. And it blew everybody's mind. They'd never been educated on that aspect. And it was such a cool month to be able to do that. I can't wait to be able to obviously just not have to do it in May, to be able to do this all year long. But finally, we're seeing people understanding that correlation. And are you seeing that in your line of work?
I am because they used to couldn't talk about mental wellness. When I first started this, it was a taboo, and really at the end of the day, we still need it. We have to just admit it, and by having the society talk about it more, our sports heroes. So that had the fact that there's a lot of talk in sports about mental wellness. I need a break. There's too much pressure. That would never have happened years ago, or they used the wrong methods to do it. Mickey Mantle is an example of somebody who didn't use his mental health well. He was the guy, the party guy, and that he says the drinking caused a, his career to end much shorter than he was. He wished he could have taken care of ourselves. And when you take care of yourself, it does. And it's in every aspect. Whenever you hear about the mental wellness, that mind, body, soul, yes, when it's aligned, when you can know how to align yourself or feel yourself getting out of alignment, you make those different choices. Again, you could eat your calories. You could have 2,000 calories a day as a man, right? You could eat Oreos, but that's not going to fill you up. That's not going to do anything. And the same thing with mental wellness. If you just doom scrolling, yeah, that'll fill up your time and it'll generally feed you the wrong way. And that's where I'm glad with a lot of the conversations and talking about how we find that balance where you can still have your little Oreo and still make sure that you're on track. The famous green line or yellow brick road. You want to stay on the yellow brick road to get to Emerald City.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You just gave me a thought that I'm going to tap into. So I think something we've been talking about for a while is addictions as it relates to nutrition. And so something I'm going to start, I'm going to reach out because I know a couple people, is being able to volunteer to go speak in some AA groups. I think that's something that it's been on the radar for me for a while, but I'm glad what you just talked about right there. I think actually
100%.
will
Yep.
tap in. I have a bunch of family members that are already in the group, and so I know a lot about the program, but I don't think nutrition is implemented at all.
They don't. So as part of the 12 steps, I was a recovery coach. So I helped people through generally is substance abuse. Food abuse is just as prevalent, or if not more so in the country than substance abuse. Because if you're eating bad, a lot of us are, "Oh, I don't have time. I'm grabbing on the go." I'm sure you have a lot of clients like that. And it's about creating those right patterns. So there are plenty of organizations like Overeaters Anonymous and things like that, or the big ones and NA and things like that. But it's
Mhm.
all about those patterns that we do. How do we overcome those patterns and create the better wellness plan? And it's again multifaceted because it's not just, okay, if I spend 5 minutes a day working out, things are going to be fine. But then what happens when the kids get frustrating? What happens when you get a ticket? Anything that
Yeah,
happens, what's your go-to grab? And giving better options is really always the best way to work through that.
I just
And
wrote
it's so,
down,
yeah,
grab
Kelly,
a pen because I just wrote down the word patterns.
yeah. It's
I,
amazing what
yeah.
David you talk about. And what do you learned from this journey? What made you want to go on this journey for mental health?
Yeah, so I originally started the journey because of myself. I saw the patterns that I was living and I needed a pattern interrupt. So the way that I work with clients is a pattern interrupt. And that's even why when I write books with people or ghostwrite, I talk to people, and most people who want to have a book, they go, I don't know. I don't know. I get stuck here. And because I have my mental wellness background, I know how to get them through that stuck period, the avoiding the obstacles or overcoming obstacles and optimizing their brain. There's a lot of techniques that I use that have been used for to have people getting over traumas, but also to optimize their brain. So I've used it with some sport players, like low-level minor league baseball players who then had a better mindset. Everything goes back to mindset because if you don't think you can, then you can't. And if you think you can, nothing will stop you to make that not happen.
But you got, like you said, you got to interrupt the pattern because if you're in that downward spiral, That's where it's
Well,
hard to break out of it. And it's interesting. I think what the work that you're doing is really impactful, and I can't wait to meet you in person.
yeah, can't wait. And that's really what it is. It's that pattern interrupt and then turning that downward spiral, as you mentioned, to an upward spiral, or at least level off, right? So when we watch, find out the beginning thing is where are we? Because there's always a new rock bottom. If anybody, since we're talking a little bit about substance abuse or even mental wellness, there's
Mhm.
always a rock bottom. And then you think, all right, I can't get any worse than this. And somehow, sometimes it does. And that's why knowing your resources, same thing as in eating and wellness, you want to make sure you know what your resources are. So rather than stress eating or giving yourself permission, which is also one of those really important parts of mental wellness, is it doesn't have, there's no 100%. We have to understand in today's world, there is no perfection. No matter what we think is perfection, there probably is a slight imperfection, and that too is okay. Giving us those ourselves that permission to not beat ourselves up on what we did or anything in the past. That's why the rear view mirror is so much smaller than the windshield, and we just got to figure out a way to keep on the path and moving forward.
And
Love that
that's
analogy. That's great.
and I think, what do you think people need to do, David, if they're running into what you just said, what you went through? What are the first steps they should take?
The first thing is recognize it or listen to people around you. So one of the things when I first went to therapy, I had some anger issues. That's how I grew up. I grew up in a house of yelling and all those things. And after some therapy sessions, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, "Did you know that when you point at me, I get really upset?" They were like, "Yeah, I do." And I was like, "Why didn't you ever say anything? These are my best like inner circle people." They're like, "We were scared." I wasn't. I would be yelling, and it was never violent in that way, but it's those things that the people we have to listen to the people around us, and we have to also provide that safe space that Neil could say to David, "Hey, man, that wasn't cool." And I still get to make that choice if I want to be not cool in that way, or I'd be like, oh, this is a lot of times now when somebody says something to me, I'm going, could you explain that to me more? Being self-aware is the biggest thing that if once we could do that, the power to do everything else becomes easier. Because when we look at it, it's not just about us. It is about us and only us, only we can save ourselves. But there is where our power is. And that's why empowering ourselves to know what our resources are and being aware of all those things, we make better choices.
Yeah. And those choices, Kelly, are very important when you make those the right choices.
So it's interesting. Neil and I were just talking to someone about stories and things. And I don't know if Neil knows this, but like the reason my company is named Kelly's Choice because it was a choice to leave a marriage, leave full-time work to start this company. Again, I think choices, but someone said, I think you should change the name. It needs to be more generic. And I was like, no, the whole message about the company, about the whole message about how it started. And again, we're just saying that all of these stories need to come out more. And hopefully, with this podcast now, we really are. And thank you, David, for bringing this to light. I think guests like you are going to help me to speak more about who I am and what that is. But that's the name of the company was because it wasn't a happy life. There was choices I needed to make and they weren't easy, but that's why the company's name is so important to me.
Yeah, I do branding as well as part of the process is to make sure our stories are aligned with who we are. So if I now tell you stories about people beating people up, that wouldn't be authentic. That's where I had a challenge with my podcast, Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. And they go, oh, it's violence. I'm like, no, the bat is about balance. The bat is about hitting your sweet spot. So I think that's a perfect choice. And most of the times when you hear everybody tell you something, that is going to be wrong. So again, with choice, because they're going to go with society, right? We're going to give you something safe. Kelly, I don't want you to get hurt. You've gone through
Right.
enough. They care about you. I'm not saying suggesting that they had ill will, but it's no, you have to go out there and do some of the things that's going to shake up the ideas. So
Mhm.
that's what's going to take you difference. And it is about choices. When you sit with somebody, no matter what their addiction is, they make a choice. And if they don't recognize that choice, did you make that right choice in your eating? Did you make that right choice having the conversation with Neil or David? All right. Are you aware of this? Then it becomes a choice. I wasn't aware of it. You don't know what you don't know. I get it.
Right.
Then it becomes our responsibility to learn that and to make the choice and make better choices going forward. Not, I didn't know, and that can't be the only excuse. You didn't know once. After that, it becomes a choice. I love the Kelly's choice.
Thanks, but we're creating, it's interesting. This is such, again, you are like literally the most perfect time to guest right now because we're creating some new sales decks. And I think that messaging needs to come out. And I think that we're talking about brands and how and potentially, I would love to work with you on a book about what this brand is and how we came to be. And again, the moment where rock bottom hits and choices need to be made and where we were. It's interesting. It is a journey for sure. You started the whole podcast with saying the long and winding road, which is one of my favorite songs, by the way. It's one of my favorite.
See, am I a connector or what, Kelly?
Yeah.
You identified that completely.
Yeah,
Am I gonna have a
it's also alignment.
24/7 podcast just connecting people? And
Yeah.
we have live office hours like Gary Vee has it for 4 hours, just have a camera on and say, okay, we're just gonna be connecting people and doing a show and creating content. It's such a powerful thing. But what David brings that I'm impressed by is the fact that he basically really is able to break things down for that person in their brand and seeing specifically this really fits this story. And he's a creative. And a lot of times you can't find coaches who are creatives. Look at what he's doing with again the comic book. He has these ideas. You need somebody that's going to think out of the box and come up with ideas that are not just available for everybody. He's coming up with different things. And he could feel the thing is we need coaches. When we hire a coach, we need a coach that's not just going to help us, but also be there for mental health. Because as entrepreneurs, Kelly, you and I, we know we've made decisions for our business that were very hard decisions. You talked about yours. I have almost the same similar type of decision. So isn't it funny how we connected? But that's the thing. We're not just these people that you see us and smile. No, we go through a lot of crap.
A
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kelly. I'm sorry.
No, I just am in full agreement. And I think having someone like David, I think the work that you're doing is really powerful. And I think we all have a story. I know we all have a story, but no one, my husband's dad, he's now deceased, but he was a psychiatrist. And he said, no one escapes life. Everybody gets something.
Yeah.
Everyone gets something. So you may look at someone and say, wow, their life looks perfect, but no one escapes life. And some people have it a little bit easier, a little bit harder, depending on what that thing is. But we all have a story. And I think if we can tell it, it really amplifies our brand, amplifies who we are, and then helps us mental health wise too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I once explained that as a orthotics with a shoe. Everybody goes, the shoe looks fine outside, but your orthotic is going to be different than mine, and Neil's is going to be different than either one of ours. And the same thing goes with life. While you might have the nice, pretty house, a trophy husband, wife, whatever, and you don't know what really is going on. Because I've worked with some of the wealthiest people in the world who, when you sit down and talk to them and being authentic, that's really where going back to the Kelly's choice, being authentic to who you are and to tell your story, you might not want to sit in that story. Unfortunately, we've all gone through, and no matter how well we've bubble wrapped our kids, they're going to have something or they're going to think that they have something, which doesn't mean it's not true. It just means that's how they interpreted it. And once we can learn those things, as much as we've done, they still have to go out and learn that 10,000 hours to be an expert. You still have to have that experience. You can't be the king of the world when you walk in at a college. You still have to go to college if that's some of the ways. And if not, when you become a craftsman, you're not the top craftsman just by walking in because you know how to do something. You have to do it. And it's that consistency. That's where you start building more and more of your expertise. And that's why finding people like yourself and Neil is a joy when you can and you can work with them, because that's when you work with an expert, you know the difference, right? When you buy 24 karat gold, you know the difference between 12 karat gold. You can see the difference. And that's the really important part. And the same thing with mental wellness. There's a lot of people who have not experienced it, and that doesn't mean that they can't help you with it. But when you know somebody, that's why I don't call myself a coach. I call myself a mentor. I've been through everything that I'm going to tell you about. It's not proud of it. It's not a badge, but because I know what it feels like, it still might feel something different for you. But guess what? I know I've been there. I had an attempted suicide. I know that the darkness for me, what that felt like, and why I chose to make those decisions, which I'm glad it was not successful. And when we're talking about mental wellness, 89% of suicide attempts are unsuccessful, but people then don't talk about it. And that's why, among the reasons why I do talk about it, when I had my suicide attempt, I was told you have to go back and talk to people. And that's what I've been doing. If you look at my life's like almost like a hockey stick after the suicide attempt on the visibility, I've taken this second chance as a complete opportunity to talk to people like you and anybody else who want me to listen to, because I know how important it is and I know how dark it was in that spot. And we just got to shine the light, because light is much lighter and much more happier than any darkness that we would experience.
Kelly, that's powerful for someone like him to come out and tell that story. That's the thing I am so impressed by, David. I couldn't imagine going through that and then being willing to tell the story. We always want to hide in the shadows, Kelly.
Absolutely. And that's what I think. But it's also, I've been waiting to tell the story also because I have two teenage daughters. So I wanted them to not be burdened by my story. And now they're almost 20 and 18. So I'm almost quite ready, but I'm not quite, because I really didn't. You know what I mean? It's definitely, there's a lot more to tell, but I've been waiting until they are old enough to be able to handle that.
I have girls the same age, and I challenge you. So just again, it's a choice. You
Yeah.
don't have to tell your story, but you can tell a story about somebody. I don't know, Kathy, let's say, Kathy's choice. And it could be your story, of course. Because I just recently, I'm finishing up a book with as a ghostwriter for this woman who is a Holocaust survivor. Her family left Belgium right before it got even worse than what they escaped. She says she remembers it as a 4-year-old child. That was the last train out of Belgium, out of Antwerp. But
Wow.
and she goes, my family doesn't want to hear the story anymore. And I said, would you give me that same opportunity that I'm asking you? I forget about your name. Her name's Carol Knack, and she's an amazing woman. At 88, she during the pandemic, she said, "I'm gonna take care of a dog, but that means I have 20 more years. I can't leave my dog, my Schnooksie alone." And I go, "You're the one person that I've known her for a lot of years to do that." But when we changed the story to a different person's name, and it was still her story, she still was able to get through that emotional baggage that she wanted to unpack for herself, but also find a value into somebody else. So there's an opportunity for you. Your girls could see it, and my girls have 4 published books in the comic book. Like I said, my girls are a similar age, 22 and 20, and they have not read, I don't think, a page of any of those books. So
Yeah.
but they know that I have it, and they also know that there's a story out there, and at some point they might pick a page, and that's the hope, is that at some point why we need to get our stories out. We don't know. Unfortunately, we know that there's a dash and there will be an end date. We don't know what that end date is, and we want to make sure our story is out there to impact people in the best way possible.
All right. Best place, David, people can connect with you. Where can they go?
David Chametzky. Look anywhere on the internet for David Chametzky. I'm the only one.
Love that.
Yes, and that's it. That's the simple thing.
I love it.
I can't say I'm the only Neil Haley, but I'm the only Neil Haley that shows up on Google. But there you go.
There's a lot of Kelly Springers, weirdly, but I'm the only Kelly Springer RD as I know it.
Yeah,
Mm.
but I think you probably on Google. I have not done that Google debility for you evaluation, but that's an interesting one. That's just because you're everywhere. And that's where we got to go to kellyschoice.com. And also pick up your book, Kelly. What's your book?
Yeah, The New Weight Loss Era on Amazon. You can pick it up today. Go right on there. Super easy. And it's going to give you all the tricks and tips to keep that weight off and do it successfully.
All right. That was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and Talk Nutrition to Me, guys. Take care.